Good afternoon and welcome to the 13th appointment of Librorum, the event dedicated to the presentation of some books chosen from those published by our members in the former Members Association Library. I inform you that the interpretation is available in English and French by connecting through the Zoom link. To ask the floor, you must register in the chat. Buenas tardes, bienvenidos a la 13ª cita de Librorum. Les informo que la interpretación está disponible en inglés y francés conectándose a través del enlace de Zoom. Para pedir hablar, debe registrarse el chat. I'm Monica Baldi, FMA Vice President, who strongly supported this initiative born in 2021 on the occasion of the celebration of the 20th anniversary of our association. After the success of the previous edition, today, Francisca Sauquillo, President and Editor of the monographic review of analysis and research Tiempo De Paz, presents number 148 on Europe Building the Future or Returning to the Past, which has been extraordinarily coordinated by President Enrique Barόn Crespo with a generous contribution of experts who are participating online. It is an important number for this semester of the Spanish presidency of the European Union, also following the debate of the Conference on the Future of Europe, which we discussed extensively in the book we published last year, Present Future of Europe. It's undoubtedly a notable contribution to the 2024 European election campaign. Allow me to greet the FMA member Cristina Gaya, High Commissioner for Spain's New Language Economy Strategic Project, Héctor Casanueva, Alejandro Peinado, who, together with me, collaborated in this publication. The FMA Honorary Secretary Teresa Riera Madurell will present the former President of the European Parliament and of the FMA, Enrique Barón Crespo, and our esteemed member,
Enrique Barón Crespo and Francisca Sauquillo,
working in the Development and Cooperation Committee. Moreover, Teresa will illustrate issue 148 of the magazine Tiempo De Paz, which was published this year in Madrid by the NGO Movimiento por la Paz. Afterwards, for Rubik, FMA board member, will coordinate the question and answer session with the online audience. I sincerely thank the Office of the European Parliament in Spain for our fruitful collaboration, and we presented this publication at a preview precisely in the Madrid office last June 27. And therefore, I was particularly pleased to give the floor to the Deputy Head of EPLO Spain, Jürgen Packing.
Thank you very much, Monica. And I'm very delighted to be here representing the EPLO in Madrid. It goes without saying that the EP office will always support the activities of the former members association. The former members are important ambassadors of the European Parliament, and we really rely on your experience and actions to help us raising awareness on the forthcoming European elections. With your background, you have the opportunity to talk to citizens and to civil society organizations of your work as a former MEP or as an MEP. And you can also make a real difference in triggering people's decision to get involved in our European project. We are, and you all know that, Monica mentioned that, at a very crucial moment in time for the European Parliament and for the European Union, because in less than a year, citizens will cast their vote. And they will, of course, ask questions, and we are getting these questions all the time. What have you actually done with my vote from 5 years ago? And we should have our answers ready. And because a lot has been done, and we know we need to show to people that we are really delivering, if we want to keep them engaging, communication is necessary. We already know that many citizens won't vote. For them, Europe is something like a faraway galaxy down there in the Brussels bubble. But when you talk to people, when you give them concrete examples, what you have been doing during your time as an MEP, which files you were passionate about, which ones were the most challenging ones, how you see the future of Europe, you can convince them more than any one of us about what is at stake in the next European election. And of course, a lot is at stake, as those of you who have participated in this interesting project, no? This number of Europa, Construir, futuro, volver, pasado. Our former EP president, Enrique Barón Crespo, who is already connected, was the president actually of the parliament at the time of the fall of the Berlin Wall. And as a German citizen, I was a student at that time. Oh no, I was still a pupil. I'm not that old. So as a pupil, I cannot begin to tell you what the European support meant at the time for us. And therefore, to me, it sounds really scary when I hear some public speeches going seemingly back to the past instead of moving towards more integration to tackle common challenges. And you know that we have that problem now in Germany, and not just in Germany, but in many other countries as well. On this, dear Enrique, you're totally right. The articles we are presenting here today are not technical texts. They come from the heart, and at the same time, they give pragmatic and real answers to real problems. I've also spotted, when I went through the publication, some members of the Conference on the Future of Europe among the contributors to this number. We have Dominic Ruiz de Vesa, we have Francisco Aldecoda, and also among the speakers today, I think Paul Rübig has contributed to this issue. And during the conference, citizens said loud and clear what they want, and one thing emerged above all: they want to know more about the European Union. And the more they know about it, the more they want to be involved in it and to be involved in its projects, with constructive criticism sometimes, but we also need constructive criticism. On our side, as I said before, we are very aware that we cannot spare any efforts on connecting with the Spanish citizens. In 2019, for the first time in decades, we saw an increase in the turnout, which before had been decreasing since 1979, unfortunately. The turnout in 2019 was also linked to the municipal elections. We don't have this advantage this time around, but nevertheless, we have to make an effort. Many of you may know that we cannot actively encourage Spaniards to go to vote because they have the right to abstention as well, but we can at least make an effort to make them aware of the election. This is our soft power, our cultural diplomacy that Mrs. Baldi or Monica introduces so well in her essay. And we know it, we have experienced it, and we will keep using this in all its forms. I have to say that some of the events we had been preparing for the Spanish presidency this year could not take place due to the current political situation. You all know what happened. And of course, the legislative process keeps advancing, as it should, because many highly important laws need to see the light before the European elections. However, in terms of communication, we all need to do an extra effort so the presidency does not go completely unnoticed for the Spanish public, because it's always a very, very good opportunity for us to showcase what Europe is doing. The good news is that we have a very creative team here in Madrid, and we are full of energy and good ideas. So I don't want to take too much time from the event. I'm sure you will have a very fruitful discussion today. You know already that our EPLO is always ready to work with the FMA in all your projects. And all that is left for me to say now is to wish you a very inspiring conference this afternoon. And thanks again to FMA to make this possible and to give us a spot in this beautiful event.
Thank you very much. Teresa Riera Madurell, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you very much, dear President, Vice President, dear colleagues and friends. Querida Paca, we call Francisca Sauquillo, we call Paca Sauquillo. Thank you very much, Monica. It is for me a great pleasure to carry out the task that you have asked me to do in this Librorum, which is to speak for a few minutes about my admired and dear friend since many years, Paca Sauquillo, and the huge work that she has been developing during her life. Honestly, I really have the feeling that I know Paca since all my life. When I arrived at the university, she was already a very well-known labor lawyer in Madrid. In 1907, she had created one of the first labor law firms from where she defended students, workers, politicians, and trade unionists during the dictatorship. I remember that Paca was highly admired for her courage in defending rights and freedoms, and also she was a reference, especially for women, for her work in favor of women's rights, gender equality, and for her courageous work for the recovery of democracy in Spain. At that time, Paca was strongly linked to movements and that were fighting against dictatorship in hiding. At the beginning of the democracy in our country, she was candidate in the first regional elections, so that in 1983, she was elected member of the Assembly of Madrid, the Regional Parliament of Madrid. Later, she was elected 2 times more for that post, in 1987 and in 1991. As a regional parliamentarian, she was appointed senator. For more than 10 years, she had a seat in the upper house where she did an excellent job, especially in the Justice Committee, being rapporteur of very relevant laws. She was a senator until 1994, when she resigned to be elected member of the European Parliament. As you probably know, she was MEP for 10 years, that is till 2004. It was during her time as senator that our life began to interact. I remember Paca in an exciting visit that we made in 1992 to Zimbabwe as part of the Spanish delegation to participate in the 5th Conference of Women Parliamentarians for Peace. Paca was the head of the delegation. But that time, she was already president of the MPDL, the Movement for Peace, Disarmament and Freedom, which, as you know, all of you know, is the NGO that she created in 1983 to work for democracy, human rights, equality, solidarity, and for promoting the education for peace all over the world. Paca was already an experienced parliamentarian in international cooperation, and I remember how much I learned from Paca during that trip and in many other occasions where I had the opportunity to work and to listen to her. I remember Paca explaining that peace is much more than the absence of war. It is a culture where prosperity has to be sustainable and shared with all people, where progress is measured by the well-being of people and by the care that people have for the environment, and where participation, dialogue, and listening to each other are the means to achieve those goals. But what it makes working with Paca extremely attractive is that she is not only a brilliant speaker defending his positions with passion, the principles and the values in which she strongly believes, but she is mainly a person of action. With Paca, you not only talk about problems, you have to find the solution to them. I remember, for instance, in Zimbabwe, that we not only attend the conference, we deliver some sanitary instruments for hospitals to the Minister of Health that we have bought from our country. We visited hospitals where women gave birth. We visited villages in remote areas to see firsthand how people live. With our ambassador, we visited a convent where some Spanish nuns were living. Probably they were at that time the only Spanish citizen in Zimbabwe. And we visited an exhibition of local artists, and to support them, we bought some sculptures that we were carrying as a baby in our trip back to Spain. I still enjoy one of them at home. There are many moments in my political life that I have been with Paca and many interesting things that I could mention, but there is not enough time for it. Maybe just to point out that in 1997, I also had the pleasure to working together with Paca, being both members of the Federal Executive Committee of our party at the time when Joaquín Almunia, our former commissioner, that all of you know very well, was the leader of the party. Paca has always been a person of action, optimistic, who works intensively to solve any problem, and full of ideas and proposals. She knows how to get anyone involved. And at the same time, she never says no to anything you may ask her. All the time, she's participating in conferences, seminars, giving talks everywhere in the world. We had a good common friend that once said, Paca is divine, as she can be, always everywhere. You have just to go to the website of the NGO to see how much the MPDL has done since the creation in 1983, that is during the 40 years of existence. Paca was also president of Solidarity, as you know, the European Network of Civil Society Organizations working for human rights, peace, and social justice. And I think she's still a member of the board. In 1984, Tiempo De Paz, the publication we are presenting today, came out for the first time. I like to remind that its first issue publishes the manifesto of Bertrand Russell and Albert Einstein against nuclear war. Since then, it comes out regularly on a quarterly basis. The monography presented today in relation to the future of Europe is its number 148. And the title, as you know, is Europe Building the Future or Going Back to the Past. It has been coordinated, as you, Monica says, is by President Enrique Barón and counts with the participation of eminent experts on European issues. Some of them are here today. Monica, you have already mentioned. I don't say anything else about that because President Barón is going to talk next about the content. But let me finish now just briefly mentioning one thing more. Along her intensive life, Paca Sauquillo has received many awards in recognition of her work. The Women of Europe Award in 1993, Progressive Women Federation Award in 1996, the Silver Rose in 2006, the Human Rights Award in 2016, among many others. Very recently, she has received a very important one, the Rojana Award, that is given by the Felipe González Foundation in recognition of her commitment to dialogue, tolerance, and harmony, and in recognition also to her ability to reach agreements, values, all of them that are at the basis of democracy, for which Paca has been working during all her life. Thank you very much, Paca, and thank you very much to all of you for your attention.
Thank you to you, Teresa. Really, and now for me, it's a great honor to give the floor to who wants this fantastic number and everything. I mean, to Paquita Sauquillo.
Enrique, ¿no? ¿O yo?
No.
Ok. Le premier, merci à mon amie Teresa
First of
Riera.
all, I would like to thank my friend Teresa. Dear friends, as the publisher of it's a pleasure for me to present to you number 148 of this publication, which is called the European Cycle, coordinated by my fellow MEP, who was president of the European Parliament when I was an MEP myself in the 1990s. So this issue of Time for Peace, which we are presenting today, is devoted to Europe's current situation and the challenges it faces in the current global context. I would like to thank the authors who have contributed their experience, knowledge in various fields to provide an overview that will help us look to the future. So some of them will be speaking today in this session. We will have Hector Casanueva, Alejandro Peinado, Cristina Gaya. So I would like to thank the members of the AAD I'm a member of, and on their behalf, on the behalf of the Vice President Monica Baldi, MEP whom I met when I was MEP myself, and with whom I shared work within the European Parliament's Development Committee, and with whom I shared a trip to Santa Teresa and Mauritania within the framework of this committee. And I think she will remember that. And finally, I would also like to thank all the people who have made this presentation possible, which I hope will be of interest to you. Thank you for your attention. And of course, I want to thank my friend Monica, my friend Teresa, and the entire organization. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Paquita. And you said, first of all, we have to give the floor to our president, very well known all over the world, Enrique Barón Crespo. To you, you have the floor.
Grazie, cara Monica. Well, good afternoon to everybody. And thank you for this opportunity, this Librorum. Let me first explain to you that Paca's family and my family, they were friends. So we know each other since we were children in the Madrid of the 50s. And well, our itineraries, our ways in life have been not parallel. We have been working together for democracy in Spain and for integrating Spain in the, at that time, European community, and well, all along this this process. I would add an information that I think is very useful, is that Paca is not only a lawyer and an activist. Paca has created with their late husband, Jacobo, and some friends, and an NGO that in this moment I think is one of the major NGOs, not only in Spain, but working in I don't know if in the 5 continents, at least in 3. So she's not only a former member. Well, she has, when Paca calls me, I am always ready for the challenge. Then she asked me to coordinate a copy of an edition of the journal, the quarterly, Tiempo De Paz, the Time of Peace. I accepted, not because it was about the Spanish presidency, but it was the opportunity, and I think it's not a Spanish initiative, it's the opportunity to think not only about our past battles, but about the challenges of the future, and not looking and reflecting at them only about with our own perspective, national, personal, or political one. So I do think that this kind of exercise, we are always talking about the elections, but well, the elections are coming. They are part of political life, but debate, information, and thinking is a part of our endeavor.
Já estou a ouvir. Ok, já está bem. Olha, como é que você nasceu tão espertinha?
Porto, que is interrupt. Porto
Manuel
is
Porto.
Porto is very active always. Yeah, no problem. No, what did I do? It was before, it was looking to the Spanish presidency and taking into account the next European elections. And another element, and I thank Jürgen Föcking about his comments about the falling of the Berlin Wall and our times in the process of creation of the European Union coming from the European community. Well, the question is not only looking to the past. We are now in an European Union that, Jürgen, at that time, we had the borders with the Soviet Union. Now we have a common border with Russia through the Baltic republics. Well, and we are the European Union, and we have other responsibilities, and we are a major player, not only. And this requires a lot of debate and a lot of thinking. So I tried to find not only Spanish experts or Spanish or other Europeans, for example, and I think it's very interesting, and he's a member of our association, a British former member, Stephen Hughes. Well, he has written, he had the courage to write an article about the reversibility of Brexit. Well, this is interesting, and you need to be brave to write about this. I asked the former secretary of the Foundation for the Progressive Europe, Ernst Stetter, to write an article about Germany. Well, Monica is universal, but she's Italian. I have tried to have a French or coming from other parts, not only thinking about our Iberian or Spanish activity. So we have a very interesting contribution from our Latin American friend, Hector Casanueva. So, and moreover, we tried not to give the floor to the people associated directly with the Spanish government, because normally the Spanish government, well, can defend and protect itself. We are not, we must not make, well, a kind of political propaganda. We must give this opportunity. And this is the reason why this copy is, or this, the motto, the theme is Europe to build the future or to come back to the past. And we know which has been the past of Europe. A final comment. Yesterday, I followed the speech of our President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, in the European Parliament. Well, looking to this publication, I think that the former members, we are on the same wavelength with the President of the Commission. And I think this means that Europe has a future, not only has a past, well, to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Enrique. And allow me to recall a very interesting exhibition that I recently saw at the National Library of Madrid, where the skills of the two esteemed, capable young lawyers were displayed, Enrique Barón Crespo and Paquita Sauquillo. For me, something very interesting, and I have to say impressionant because only two young lawyers, and very interesting. But anyhow, I think, thank you, Enrique, President Barón Crespo. And I want to give the floor, if Cristina Gallac is still there, otherwise I pass to Alejandro Peinado, because as Francisca Sauquillo, here is Cristina. Cristina Gallac, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much from Madrid to all of you, and for inviting me to very briefly address this spectacular gathering of friends and pro-Europeist colleagues from the institutions. And first of all, let me also join a couple of words of praising for Paca Sauquillo and Enrique Barón Crespo for their leadership. As many of the other contributors to this book that today we are reviewing, when Paca or Enrique asked me whether I want to collaborate or I can collaborate in one of their actions, my response is almost automatic, yes, because the values, the thoughts, the energy they put into building our common house, Europe, is fantastic. And I should underline the work that is currently being done and for so many years by the foundation that Paca leads, MLDP. So very briefly about the small contribution I made to the book it's being reviewed now. I wanted to briefly address the vision and the transformational impact that the European funds, the next generation funds, are already having and will have in Europe. And in particular in Spain, as we all know, these funds were agreed by the leaders and basically supported by the European Parliament members because they were to be the instrument of not only recovering from the impact of the pandemic, but also of transitioning to a new future. That's why the idea of future is so important in this book. Why? Because they address, at least in the case of Spain, but I'm sure in the case of the other member states, they address 4 key areas in which investment has to be done in order to walk the path of transformation. First of all, digital transformation, green transformation, inclusion transformations, in particular equality, and cohesion. Investments in these 4 areas are the ones that are financed by the funds, and we are already seeing definitely the impact. The fact that currently Spain is growing economically a little bit more than the rest of the EU member states is no doubt thanks to the impact it is having in our economy, the funds. But the other most important part of which I wanted to convey through my contribution to the book that we collectively wrote is the manner in which we change the approach of collectively financing key challenges in Europe. The fact that the funds are drawn from the European Commission energy and decisiveness in the international markets through collective debt is extraordinary impact. And it really paves the way to new ways of financing, collective financing. And definitely it's a milestone in the manner in which our economic union and monetary union is founded. So for me, this path to the future has these key 2 legs. One, the transformations that are needed, which are more complex to finance due to the of course, COVID, but due to the war, the impact of the war, but now the resources are there. And second, the decision, the collective decision to draw the funds in a different manner and to collectively advance through a new step of our common European common economy. So in summary, to my mind, the EU Next Generations is a game changer in terms of transformations and in terms in which Europe is being constructed. And it, for me, underlines once again, the key word that keeps us together, which is solidarity. The solidarity which is at the foundation of the European Union is at the center of the shaping and the structuring of the European Next Generation funds. Definitely is the best service we can pay to the new generations, to the next generations, and ensuring that the resources, in the case of Spain, we have never received the amount of resources that we are now regularly receiving, do force us to a very severe, strict, and well and transparent means of spending this collective effort. Thanks very much, colleagues, for allowing me to say a few words about my contribution. Congratulations for the work your organization does to keep Europe moving on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cristina. For us, as you know, you are somebody special in our association. We take care of you a lot. So now for me, it's a great pleasure to give the floor to Professor Héctor Casanueva. And after Cristina Gaillac, perfect, because he's going to speak about Latin America and Europe. So you know very well this issue, Cristina. So we give the floor to Professor Casanueva.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you for this invitation and the opportunity to participate in this meeting, in this important session. And I would like to give a cordial greeting to Paquita Sauquillo, to President Enrique Barón, to Teresa Rodriguez, and all of you. Thank you very much for the invitation. My contribution to this book has to do with the relationship between the European Union and the Global South. And this is a very, from my point of view, very important issue, because I believe, and I think you will share with me this view, the future of the European Union is no longer depends on itself, but to choose strategic alliances well. And in this sense, I think the European Union strategy of global alliance to ensure its future requires those regions and groups of countries with which it is natural and possible to share interests and values and visions of the new globalization and build a common future. Not all countries in the so-called Global South meet these characteristics of compatibility of interests and values with the European Union. The diversity and heterogeneity of the group is a fact, and therefore the strategic relations, political, economic, and cooperation that can be established by the European Union must necessarily be differentiated, not only between regions, Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, with different and even dissimilar history, culture, realities, and challenges, but within the regions themselves. In Asia, India is not the same as China, or Vietnam as Singapore, or South Korea as North Korea or Malaysia. In Africa, the North, Center, and South, or Nigeria, are not the same as Kenya or South Africa. The recent BRICS summit, for example, is an example that not all countries in the Global South can be considered strategic allies of the European Union. India is not the same as China, I said that, nor Brazil, Russia, Argentina, as Iran. The proposals to expand the group to Argentina, Iran, and Saudi Arabia demonstrated. So the strategic relations of the European Union with the countries of the Global South must be differentiated given the heterogeneity. The European Council report, Forward Look 2023, published on January of the year by the Space Service, concludes that long-term global trends such as the global fragmentation, polarization of society, evolving economic models, and pressing environmental challenges have accelerated, especially in the wake of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. According to the Council, the European Union is witnessing the beginning of the new era, with challenges and opportunities, which may require a profound re-evaluation of the European model. In particular, it points out that the 7 challenges already visualized in 2022 generate 4 consequences for 2023 and beyond: shortage of food, materials and energy, social pressures, militarization of interdependencies, and the need to preserve the international influence of the European Union. What flows from what the Council proposed, in line with the reports and results of the Space Conference of 21 and 2022, is the systemic nature of the challenges and their consequences, and in this sense, we must understand that the need to preserve the international influence of the European Union is an essential component to face the other challenges and consequences. Yesterday's speech by President von der Leyen on the State of the Union contains interesting elements in this sense. Was a very optimistic, but at the same time, a realistic message and vision and approach to the future. This must place open strategy autonomy in the spotlight, as well as fine-tune the strategic compass in regard to its relationship with the world. And we should understand that also it is structured for security and defense. And in this field, the priorities that are indicated in terms of threats, autonomy, and capacity generation assurance of strategic spaces, such as the sea, outer space, cyberspace, and the hybrid components of current wars, must necessarily be articulated with the priority of an open strategic autonomy, since security threats can also be commercial, technological, and productive. For example, where to place Latin America in the order of priorities of the strategic compass does not appear yet. Only the African Union and ASEAN appears. Does it mean that, according to the European Union, Latin America is irrelevant for these purposes? Perhaps it is in terms of the current threat to Europe's security, but it certainly is not in a prospective view. If we consider, for example, that the double ecological and digital transition of the European Union generates a growing demand for products with large reserves and productive capacity precisely in Latin America. In this sense, the recent CELAC European Union Summit can be a starting point for this strategic approach of the European Union and also Latin America. That it has been held is already a success after 8 years of interruptions. But its results, judging by the final declaration, cannot be considered entirely success. But there are components of the consensus which can be the beginning of the 21st century model strategic relationship with the commitment to jointly address global challenges and opportunities, and from the European perspective, ensure an alliance with global impact with the region with which is clear and possible to share interests and values. Finally, I want to mention that there are 2 moments this semester during the Spanish presidency of the European Union, which can serve for a future strategy for the European Union. One is the informal European Council in Granada in October 6th, and in which the open strategy autonomy will be central point. And I hope that Latin America must be part of this approach and analysis. The other, outside the European Union framework, but promoted by Spain, is the meeting of the European political community of 44 European countries, including the United Kingdom. This is a very, very, very important. This is my conclusion to this conversation, and I feel that in both cases, these 2 meetings, a substantive debate should be generated about the European Union alliance and policy with the global south. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you, Professor Casanova. And I think it'll be very important to listen now to Alejandro Peinado, that together with Domènec Ruiz de Vesa, the members of the European Parliament, they speak about the opportunity of the Spanish presidency and about democracy. It'd be very important. Alejandro, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Monica. Good afternoon to everyone. In third place, I would like to thank to Monica Baldi, to Francisca Sauquillo, PACA, President of Tiempo De Paz, and our President Enrique Barón for the invitation today of this event. I am very honored. I also want to excuse Domènec Ruiz de Vesa because he is on his way from Strasbourg and he could not make it to be with all of you today. So Domènec and myself, we co-signed the article entitled The Strengthening of Democracy and the Completion of the European Federation, and the opportunity that implies the Spanish presidency of the EU Council. We have tried to describe in this article that the European Union is an unparalleled example of transnational democracy and which is progressively evolving towards a full federation. We firmly believe that if we put together all the most important events that took place during the last decade, we are talking about the financial crisis in 2010, the Arabic Springs in 2011, the Brexit 2016, the victory in the United States of Donald Trump, the digital transformation that was referred also before by Cristina Gallac. If we put together all these huge events, plus the events that took place during these recent years, we are talking about the COVID-19 pandemic and the war of aggression provoked by Putin in Ukraine, we are seeing, all of us, it's very evident that the European Union does not have proper tools to manage the whole situation in this global scenario. It is more necessary than ever to deepening the political integration, to give more specific and more efficient tools to the European Union if we want to keep being one of the role player in the global context. So we also believe that the Spanish presidency that started last July 2023 will play a very important role, because our presidency at that moment is very timely. Is the last council presidency in practical terms in this 9th term of the European institutions, because then we will have the Belgian presidency, but most of the files will be agreed by that time, and the Belgian presidency should focus on the organization of the European elections. And in this timely and necessary Spanish presidency of the Council, and we believe that it's important to tackle some of the priorities that the European Parliament is putting forward during this last term. And some of them are included in the priorities of the Spanish presidency. We are, for example, meaning a political agreement in the Council on the transnational list and the new European electoral law. Why we need a new European electoral law? Because there is a need to Europeanize the elections to the European Parliament. The citizens need to hear European messages when we are discussing the European political context. Now the European elections are like 27 national parallel elections at the same time. We cannot hear, we do not listen real European messages. We need a European Union-wide constituency in order to facilitate that the candidates can make campaign in different member states. A unique list throughout all the Union, so we can make visible that the first candidate in the list is pointed out to be the candidate to preside over the Commission. And in this way, we have a real instrument to make feel the European citizens that this election is really a European one. That's a very important point. What's happening now in Council? This file is a complex one because even the Parliament took a strong position supporting the transnational list, which was not easy in the past. The Council should agree by unanimity on this. So it's difficult, but we hope that the Spanish presidency will bring back to the table of the Council of General Affairs this dossier in order to put it forward. At the same time, and I was referring before, the AFCO committee presented today the report on amendment to the treaties. It's a very it's a milestone of this term, this file, because the Council was requesting to the Parliament to adopt a proposal in its committee to make itself aware of the two resolutions that was adopted in May and June calling for a convention to reform the treaties. So the report was presented today in AFCO. Is following up and taking into consideration the main proposals adopted by the Conference on the Future of Europe, and is a very consistent and detailed report. With this report, the Parliament is going to send a strong message supporting overcoming unanimity in Council, extending the ordinary legislative procedure to all the policy areas, giving to the European Parliament the right to initiate legislation, or among other measures, to implement or to put into the treaty the European Pillar of Social Rights principle. This is why it's very significant. The discussion on the amendments, we hope it will not be very long. So hoping that the Spanish presidency will have in November the possibility to transmit to the European Council this report and the need to call for a convention to reform the treaties.
Thank you, Alejandro.
Can I finish very briefly?
A few minutes.
Or I am extending.
Few seconds.
Okay, I am finishing because maybe I was extending myself too much, but
No.
just wanted to pencil the main points of this article and our priorities. Of course, we are supporting the idea of overcoming unanimity in foreign policy, the reforms needed in the economic legislative framework. We need to make permanent the European Recovery Plan, and the Spanish government was the first in launching the European Marshall Plan before the Franco-German proposal. So we really believe, in conclusion, that if the COVID-19 pandemic was leading to the creation of the health union with the common vaccination campaign, or the financial union that the European Recovery Plan and the Next Generation Fund is a very good example. Now that we are living this dramatic situation in Europe with the war of aggression in Ukraine, this is an ingredient that will make us to move forward to the defense union, to the migration union, or to the energy union. So we are living in a real federal political momentum in the European Union. Thank you very much again, and looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Alejandro. It's very interesting what you're saying. So sorry to say we have to go on because we have just 15 minutes for the debate. And I know somebody of them, they want to, some of the people want to ask the floor. So I give the floor to Paul Rubik, to our FMA members, board members. You have the floor, Paul Rubik, for the debate.
Yes, thank you so much. I think we all know that the future of Europe is quite important, and it's not only the elections. I think we also should see the history of Europe, at least with the six started the European Union out of a terrible two wars, the First and the Second World War. And we got the message that steel and coal is the base of military. If we look into the future, maybe chips and AI is a new area where we should work together. And at least it's the respect between the different people and the tolerance to other opinions, which makes us strong. I can remember as I came 1995 to the European Parliament, the extreme left never would vote with the extreme right, not depending on the issue. But now it has changed. It's the extreme on both sides are more or less against the system of democratic development. So it's in our hands how to go on with the European debate. And also Barón Crespo made a very good suggestion that we should have options available. The options assessment in politics it's quite important to see which impact the options will have, and at least also the question on the risk assessment, which we learned with Brexit. So if we are not flexible enough, if we are not ready to make a compromise, it could happen that countries disappear again from the European Union. And that what I learned personally, that of course we should have principles, but it's always necessary, and that was also told today, to listen to the others, to understand why and when they are having a reason for being in favor or against. So I want to make it as short as possible. I would ask now if we want to have some questions or some remarks. I would be very happy to give you now the opportunity to have a say on the different issues which we have heard within the last hour. You know, you have on the bottom line, you have the possibility to ask for the floors, and a yellow hand will appear on the screen. And then we can select who will be the first one who wants to speak. Maybe Monica can help me a little bit. If you see somebody who wants to speak. Yes, now I see it. I think the first one is Jean-Pierre Audi. So Jean-Pierre, yes. Please go ahead.
Merci beaucoup, Paul.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Ces interventions
and thanks for all the inputs we've heard today. I must admit that I discovered this review, this publication, and I speak a bit of Spanish. I will try to read it, to read some of the articles in the original language, because it seems very interesting. Now, my question is about peace. Peace is one of the key values of the European Union, and I've worked, as all of us, with passion at the European Parliament, with really peace as the core value. Today, leaders of the European Union only agree on one thing, the war in Ukraine against Russia. But my question is, in 2014, when Russia invaded Crimea, there were 7 years of negotiations that ended up with a war, and every war have an end. And I'm quite surprised when I read, and it was during the presidency of France in the first semester of 2022, during the Versailles Summit, the conclusions on Ukraine were 250 words, and none of them were the word peace. And a few weeks later, on the 24th of March 2022, 980 words of conclusion, and peace is not mentioned. So maybe my question would be, do we have a way to reach peace for the European neighborhood, and what is the way to follow?
Yes, thank you, Jean-Pierre. I would suggest that we take 3 questions at one and then gives the opportunity to come back. Next one would be Martina Anderson, please.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, and this is my first meeting, and I appreciate the opportunity to listen and to learn and to have an exchange of views. I was an MEP in the European Parliament until Brexit. The people in the north of Ireland that I represent voted to remain in the EU, but were taken out of the EU against their democratically expressed wishes. And I suppose I was very interested when I heard today the comments that was made in relation to what is in the report. Unfortunately, I can't read or speak Spanish, but I hope to be able to get it interpreted in relation to Brexit and some of the contributions that have been made. On this, the 25th anniversary year of the Good Friday Agreement, when the report is talking about the time for peace, and obviously we cannot but remember the war of aggression that is taking place as we speak, and all that that entails. I think there are probably lessons that could be learned in relation to emerging from conflict and what happened in the north of Ireland in the Good Friday Agreement. And it's something I think that I would like to bring attention to in this association in relation to, unfortunately, in the 25th anniversary year of the Good Friday Agreement, we do not have any of the strands of that agreement operating. Strand 1 of the agreement, the assembly, we don't have a functioning assembly because the DUP has walked out of the political institutions. Strand 2 of the agreement, which is the All-Ireland nature of the agreement, doesn't work, and we know that Brexit in terms of regulatory alignment across this island is crucially important. And then Strand 3, there is tension in the East-West, and you can hear that in some of the commentary that takes place in terms of the British government almost chastising an Irish Taoiseach for raising the case of the big conversation that's taken place here in Ireland about the constitutional future of Ireland. So whilst I don't have a question, I think when reports like that are being written, I think what's happening here in Ireland, what has happened in the past, the journey that we are on, and the contributions that we can make, and the role of the EU in assisting us to carefully plan and prepare for constitutional change in Ireland, which I believe will come And I think experts like yourselves and others could play a vital role in ensuring that the peaceful democratic process that takes place for Ireland going forward, and Ireland's place, all of Ireland being in the EU, could be helped by attention being given by people like yourselves and others who are in this forum. So thank you for allowing me to say those few words, and I look forward to getting to know you all better as we work through the time ahead and the years ahead. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Martina. Next one is Lord Kirkhope, please. We can't hear you. Maybe you should mute. Now he's frozen, I think. Just try it again. Can you hear us? No, he's frozen again. So maybe we in the meantime, we go to Margarita Margarita, are you ready?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. Now we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, look, I'm sorry, I won't keep you very long. Paul, I think you're in the International Space Station by the look of your background. I'm talking to you from my home in Yorkshire, and greetings to all my old friends. And my nostalgia extends to a deep yearning that we can find a solution to the future relationships between the third country of the United Kingdom and the European Union. Ideally, I wish we hadn't left, of course, but here we are in a situation where we have to try and find accommodations. And what I was really, it's a very interesting discussion, this, because I believe looking at the future of the European Union, the future of Europe as a whole, it may well be that perhaps we have to readdress how we deal with third countries, whether that is done on a theme-by-theme basis, or whether it is a broader thing to look at countries that perhaps we do not, perhaps you do not want to see as full members, perhaps, but where we can have some form of intellectual concentric arrangement for Europe, which actually strengthens the core of Europe, but also allows others to participate and associate themselves. And the final thing I wanted to say today is this. We are now, I'm delighted to hear just today from our government that we are actually now trying to become associated with some very important European projects that some of the more skeptical types got us out of, such as Horizon. We're looking very carefully at that. Copernicus, these are big, big matters that we are rejoining. And that is terrific. And what I'd like to see is more of this going on. I shall be very enthusiastic. Conservative European forums working very hard on ideas. And I think we really have to try very hard to make sure that the UK is not totally lost to European values and not lost to the European Union. So that's all I wanted to say, but I wanted to thank this very interesting contribution. I shall come back again, but it's lovely to see so many old friends as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And it's only one hand more, it's Margarita. I think you also should go ahead immediately, please.
Could you hear me?
Yes.
I will be very short and touch, of course, subject which important for the future is Ukraine conflict, because I think that there are very good opportunities to reach peace agreement right now. And I explain, there are two communities in Ukraine, Russians and Ukrainians. Russians, part of Russian community lives in Crimea, southern Ukraine. Both communities, as it's seen from Lithuania, where I am, they are very tired of conflict. And they can reach agreement, sustainable peace agreement through the negotiations at civil society, or let's say different groups meetings, because they have very active civil society, different groups. And the mistake which European Union is doing, that it's trying to, and the United States and the UK, they're trying to reach peace agreements through the contacts at high level. But actually the peace can be sustainable if Russian community and Ukrainian community will find way to live together, then nobody from outside could intervene. And they are in mood and in position and have people to reach this agreement. And I think that European Parliament can contribute to facilitate that. And it's not necessary to take position, very radical position, which now European Union is taking. It's up to the people of this country to make an agreement, and they can do it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. So now we are ready for the answers. Who want to start with the answers?
Excuse me, I think Paquita or Enrique or Paquita, one of them.
So Enrico, please.
The lawyers.
Sí, no. A ver, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, bueno. No. Brièvement, d'abord, à Jean-Pierre Audy.
So to answer the question from Jean-Pierre first. Obviously, it's not the right time to write a book on peace. But of course, the name of the of this article is Tiempo De Paz, time of peace. So it is working for peace. I've worked for peace, and Paca too. And for example, we've worked at the University for Peace in Costa Rica. But it's not all about it. We are not trying there to impose peace. What we want to do and what we want to say, and this is my own opinion, and I think the facts do prove it, the mission of Putin is the same as the Tsar Alexander I, and this is totally incompatible with the European Union. So we need to find another way, another path to live together. And the proposal that was made yesterday by our President von der Leyen, I think it's very positive and goes in the right direction. But we have to keep going, for sure.
I only make a statement is when you give the British or the Irish people the possibility to participate in a debate, they are always ready. This is good for democracy, and you are very, very strong. To Lord Kirkhope, well, personally, I can say we missed you. It's up to you. It's up to you to decide which kind of relationship in the future you want to have with us. But I make a proposal to the current leadership of our former members association, because I think that there are some British members in the board of the former members association. Well, why not to organize a debate on a text with the British members that are full members and that they pay their contribution. They are still with us. So this would be a constructive proposal. And well, on Martina Anderson, well, I think that well, Ireland is a very active member. I am in favor of extending and making possible peace in the future of all the European Union. I stop here and I give the floor to Paca. And to Margarita, thank you for your statement.
Paca, please.
I would
like to thank everyone. Our organization does work for peace. We know this is the situation in Europe right now, but our organization, yes, indeed works for peace. We work for refugees, we work for humanitarian aid, and also for an agreement between countries, but our movement for peace, our organization, and there is President Manuel Labacha, quite briefly, could answer that. But anyway, we could decide that our next publication would be on peace. We have a publishing committee, and we are discussing the situation in Ukraine, in Russia, and the general context. And right now, we are really concerned about the refugees from Morocco, from Syria, from Africa. So we think that for peace, it is also very important. So the next publication might be about peace. But anyway, I think that the question was from our member to ask for an article about it.
First of all, let me say I agree with this next number of Tiempo de Paz. As Vice President of our SPACE, for me, it's very important speaking about peace in the right way. Thanks to all of you who participated in this virtual meeting, and I have to tell you, warm greetings from Presidents Klaus Hansch and Hans-Gerd Pöttering, who were unable to connect. I sincerely thank President Enrique Barón Crespo and Francisca Sauquillo, who have allowed us to reflect on the multiple aspects of the European Union through the contribution of generous experts who, with passion and reasonableness, have highlighted the importance of continuing to build a common Europe future. This issue 148 of Tiempo de Paz takes on a special value in the general panorama and encourage an in-depth debate also in view of the next European electoral campaign. The articles, like mine, analyze the objects and the values on which the European Union is founded, which must always face new and difficult challenges, especially to promote the peace and security and respect fundamental rights and freedom. In this regard, I would like to recall the extraordinary activity of the NGO Movimiento por la Paz, which since 1983 has been working for full respect for human rights, democratic governance, equality, and solidarity between individuals and people, as Paquita said, because peace is much more than the absence of war, they say. Thanks to the digital staff of Tiempo de Paz, and to all those who intervened and were able to grasp the important key elements of this magazine, but above all, to the co-editors, Cristina Gallac, Hector Casanueva, Alejandro Peinado. I'm grateful to Honorary Secretary Teresa Riera Madurell and Paul Rubik for their excellent contribution, and in particular to our General Secretary, Elisabetta Fonk, assisted by Valerie Raskin, for the preparation of this event, and to Deputy Director Jürgen Facking of the European Parliament Office in Spain for the support. The next event of the Librorum will be Thursday, 7 December, in the European Parliament in Brussels, with the presentation of the book Participation in Europe, published by the European Parliament Former Member Association and the Historical Archives of the European Union in collaboration with the Italian National Agency Erasmus Plus Indire. The book can also be read on our website. So, arrivederci.
Arrivederci, auf Wiedersehen.
Gracias.
Chao, gracias. Dios, hasta la vista.